Good evening and welcome back to our weekly question and answer series for Anash.org. Question: can we wash and set a sheitel in the 9 days? Washing and setting a sheitel is not the same thing. The Treis Poiskim, the contemporary Poiskim like Harav Fisher and Alichas Eben Shloima and other Poiskim say that a sheitel, a wig, is considered like a clothing. So when it comes to washing a wig, it's not permitted. It's osur. Why? Because in the 9 days we know you're not permitted to wash clothing in the 9 days. So since a wig, a sheitel, is considered a beged, so you cannot wash a sheitel in the 9 days. Regarding setting it, they say that you could do it in the 9 days. Because the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Tuf Kivni and Aleph, Siv Vov, that it's osur to fix new clothing and new shoes in the 9 days. So the Mechaber states clearly new clothing. So from there, the Poskim Amadayik, that if it's not new clothing, it is permitted to fix. So therefore, if a person has a dress or clothing which a button fell down or got a tiny hole or something, you want to fix it in order to wear it, you are permitted to fix it since it's old clothing. New clothing you cannot do, old clothing you could do. So setting a sheitel, it goes into the category of fixing a beged which is old, because it's not a new sheitel, it's an old sheitel, you're only setting it. So therefore, since it's an old sheitel and a sheitel is considered like clothing, you are permitted to fix it, and setting goes into the category of fixing it, and you could do it in the 9 days. But you cannot do a curling iron, because curling iron is considered giyutz, like ironing. And we know the Shulchan Aruch writes that you cannot iron clothing in the 9 days. So to answer your question, washing a sheitel is not permitted in the 9 days. Making a sheitel, curling iron, is not permitted in the 9 days. But setting a sheitel, it is permitted in the 9 days. Question: if I have to travel on Monday after Tisha B'Av, or send a child to camp on that day, that means the day after Tisha B'Av, am I allowed to do laundry on the day after Tisha B'Av before Chatzos? And the answer is yes. If it's a Shas Chag like this, you have to send a child to camp and you have to fly on Monday, you could make laundry already from the morning. And Rebbe Tzalel Stern in the Sefer Halach B'Mitechu, Perik Lamed Vov Sif Mem Aleph, gives the explanation why you could be lenient. He says that the Bach writes that if Tisha B'Av falls on a Thursday and a person has to leave after Tisha B'Av lemarchakim, so he could wash on Wednesday, that means the day before Tisha B'Av, he could wash clothing for a couple of Shabbosim which he will need. And then the Bach adds on, if you could have a goy, do it through a goy. But if you cannot have a goy, even a yid could wash in the 9 days on Wednesday clothing that he will need after the 9 days. Now the Mungavruam disagrees with the Bach, but Sof Kesov, the Bach holds it is mutter. Now that's in the 9 days, which is Osir Medina. When we talk about after the 9 days, the day after Tisha B'Av, although we are machmer not to wash till Chatzos, but it's only mitzad minig. So therefore, if you have to travel and you have to leave, you could be Meikel on Motzei Shabbos. You could be Meikel on Motzei Tisha B'Av. The same writes also the Shmir Shabbos Kelechusa, Peirig Mem Bais Ha'uret Zayin, and he goes even further. He says, he gives a svara, a reasoning that the reason why you cannot wash laundry in the 9 days is because you shouldn't be Mesiach Das from Availas. That means you shouldn't be distracted from the Availas of the 9 days. So when you wash laundry, you could be distracted. But so that's only in the 9 days, which you still have a chiyuv of Availas. But when it comes after the 9 days, it is not because of Mesiach Das and Availas. So therefore, after the 9 days, you could be lenient to wash when you need. Especially, he writes, that today's day we have wash machines, that you don't have to wash yourself, you only push a button, you could be more lenient. Now he finishes up Tzurich in Ledina, because that's not the minig. So the minig bepoil is that you are not lenient to wash laundry the day after Tisha B'Av till Chatzos. But when it's a Shas Chag, like a person has to leave town or he has to send a child to camp, he could be lenient and rely on the poskim which say that you could wash before Chatzos. This is also what it says, brings down in Nita Gavril, Pairik Paites, Sif Aleph, that when a person has to leave the day after Tisha B'Av, he could be lenient to wash clothing before Chatzos. The reason is because the Mishnah Berurah brings down a Mamar Motcha, which says that the Shulchan Aruch only says that you should be machmer not to drink wine and eat meat the day after Tisha B'Av till Chatzos, but not to wash. Washing you could do right away after Tisha B'Av. Now, although the minig is not like the Mamar Motcha, the minig is that we are machmer even on washing, not only eating meat and drinking wine, we are also machmer not to wash clothing till Chatzos, but b'mukim tchak, that he has to leave or a child has to leave, you could be lenient and you could wash laundry before Chatzos. Question: can I plant trees till the 9 days? The answer is yes. From after Shavuos B'Tammuz till the 9 days, you could plant trees. The Isser of taking care of your garden is only in the 9 days. Before the 9 days, you could plant trees, cut the grass, and do anything and everything what you need to do to take care of your garden till the 9 days. Follow-up question from last week. What's the halacha if I am on a plane and I'm watching out from the window a lightning storm, but I don't hear any thunder? Does one say a bracha on the lightning or no, since he didn't have the thunder? And the answer is, as I mentioned last week, you make a bracha on lightning even though you don't hear a thunder. So therefore, even though you are in a plane and you don't hear the thunder, since you see the lightning, you could make a bracha on the lightning. Question: can I cut the hair of my 7-year-old child after she was B'Tammuz before the 9 days? And the answer is no. In Shulchan Aruch Siman Tuf Kifnin Aleph Sif Yidalet, the Mechaber writes, it is not permitted for adults to cut the hair of children and wash clothing from children. The Mechaber writes it in the 9 days, because the Mechaber and so go the Sfardim hold all the halachas only from the 9 days. But the Aliyah Rabba writes that according to our meaning, that we start the Isser of Tispoiras, the Isser of cutting hairs from Shavuos B'Tammuz, and we start the Isser not washing laundry from Rosh Chodesh, the same will go for a child, that from Shavuos B'Tammuz we don't cut hair from a child, and from Rosh Chodesh we don't wash clothing from a child. Now, I'm not talking children which has a heter to wash in the 9 days, but older children we don't wash from the 9 days, and we don't cut their hairs from Shavuos B'Tammuz. Now, the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Tuf Kifnin Aleph Sif Kuten Pai Bais brings a Chaya Udam, which he says that L'tzoirech Ketanim, that means for children you don't need to be machmer, and you could only be machmer in the 9 days, and you don't have to be machmer from Shavuos B'Tammuz. But Lamas, the minig is not like this. And the minig is that we are not cutting any hair from a child after Shavuos B'Tammuz. Maybe if it's a Shasat Ragudel, if it bothers him very much and he has pain, you could be Michael. But if it's not such a case, the meaning is to be machmar even for a child, not to cut his hair after Shavuos B'Tammuz. Now, on a side note, I'll just say in a practical matter, it's not kedai to do it, because if you're going to cut his hairs after Shavuos B'Tammuz, you're going to come next day to Cheder, and the children will ask, what happened to you? You cut your hair. It's the 3 weeks, Shavuos B'Tammuz. It won't be a pleasant experience for your child. So therefore, even for a practical matter, it's not kedai to be lenient. But in any case, the meaning is that even for a child, we are not cutting his hairs from Shavuos B'Tammuz. Question: is it permitted to buy a talis kuten, a tzitzis, in after Shavuos B'Tammuz till the 9 days? Now, after the 9 days, there's no question it's also to buy, because it's also to buy any clothing. So therefore, even a tzitzah you cannot buy in the 9 days. But the question over here is after Shavuos B'Tammuz till the 9 days. Now, the Igros Moshe, the Moshe Feinstein, writes in his Tshuvas Rechaim Chayli Gimel Simapai. He writes over there that a talis is considered a beged. Therefore, it is also to buy a talis in the 9 days. And to our minig, it's also to buy and to put on a new talis from Shavuos B'Tammuz, because it's a new beged. Although he writes, you only put it on for the mitzvah when you're davening. It's not a beged that you go regularly, but it's still considered a beged. As we see that when a person buys a talis godel, according to the Shulchan Aruch, he needs to say Shechianu. Like when he buys Kailim Chadushim. So a talis is considered a beged like all other begodim, and therefore when he buys a talis godel, he needs to make a Shechianu. So therefore, the Moshe says that you cannot buy and put on a talis godel from Shavuos B'Tammuz. When it comes to a talis cotton, he writes that since a talis cotton has no cheshivas by people, it's not like a talis godel, which is excitement, and a person does not buy a talis godel that often. So therefore, he makes a shiryon. When it comes to a talis kuten, people have no simcha. It's not choshev for them, and they don't make a shiryon. So therefore, he could buy in Beinam Tzorim after Shavuos B'Tammuz till the 9 days. He could buy a talis kuten. He says only if a person, for him it's a big excitement to buying a new talis kuten, it's choshev for him, he should not buy a talis kuten after Shavuos B'Tammuz. But if he is like most of the people, a regular person which doesn't have a big simcha by buying a talis cotton, it's not choshev for him, therefore he doesn't make a shechianu, and therefore he could buy one after Shavuos B'Tammuz till the 9 days. Now, to answer your question, Could you buy a talis cotton after Shavuos B'Tammuz till the 9 days? It depends. If you are like most people, it's not a big choshev, it's not a choshev thing, then you could buy one after Shavuos B'Tammuz. If it is choshev for you and it's excitement, then you should not buy a talis cotton either after the 9 days, after the Shavuos B'Tammuz. Next week Shabbos is going to be Rosh Chodesh Av. Now we know that from Rosh Chodesh Av it starts the 9 days. Now although the halachas, which the regular halachas which starts on the 9 days will not start on Shabbos, that's therefore you can eat meat, you could drink wine, you could put on clothing which was washed already and you didn't put it on till now, which in the 9 days it's not permitted to put on clothing which was washed and you didn't put it on after washing. Shabbos you could do that. Now people who wants to change their clothing in the 9 days, and they want to have clothing that they should be able to change during the 9 days, they should prepare before Shabbos as much clothing as they want, as they need, and change it every half an hour, after an hour to change. That means if a person wants to have 4 shirts which he wants to change during the 9 days, or 6, whatever it should be, he should put it on before Shabbos, wear it for half an hour, then he takes it off, then he could change it and put it on in the 9 days because it's already worn before the 9 days. But if a person forgot to prepare the shirts, the pants, whatever he needs during the 9 days, he could do it on Shabbos. Only he could do one set of clothing which he puts on Erev Shabbos, L'Kuvet Shabbos. Then when he goes to sleep, he undresses, and in the morning he puts on a new pair of clothing which he wants to use. And then afternoon, if he takes a nap, he should take off his clothing, and when he puts on the clothing again after the nap, he can put on a 3rd set of clothing. But he cannot do this thing of putting on 5, 6, 7, 8 pairs of clothing on Shabbos to prepare it for the 9 days, because according to some poskim, like the Ben Ish Chai, the Rav Pa'ulam, on other poskim hold that that's considered achona. Since you are preparing in Shabbos a thing which you don't need on Shabbos, you only need it for during the weekdays, so therefore you cannot do it on Shabbos. Now there are some which disagree with them, but a lot of poskim agree with them. It's a problem of achona, so therefore you should prepare it like etchila, everything before Shabbos. If it happened to be you forgot to do it, then you should do as I mentioned before. Put on a fresh set L'Kuvet Shabbos, then put on a fresh set Shabbos in the morning, and if you nap, put on a fresh set for Shabbos afternoon after you nap. Question: if a person has his tefillin on a table and he fell down Rachmon Litzlan on the floor, does he need to fast or not? Now the Mung Avruam in Siman Mem Dalet Sifkut Neches brings down a Sefer Mishpetei Shmuel, which he gives an explanation on the minig ha'olam that they fast when tefillin falls down on the floor. Now, according to the Lashon of the Mung Avruam, when tefillin fell down on the floor, we see that you fast even if it didn't fall down from your hands, even if it fell down from the table, for instance. Since it fell down on the floor, you should fast. But when you look in the Sefer itself, the Mishpetei Shmuel Shalosh Yeshivas Siman Yid Beis, he writes, quote, you should know tefillin has a very big kedusha, and you have to watch it very careful. And all the time which is on you, you should not be Masich Das. That means you shouldn't be distracted from your tefillin. And when tefillin falls down from your hand, it's a gewaldige bezoyen, and therefore you fast. And that's the meaning of people, when tefillin falls down from your hand, you fast. So we see already that in the Mishpat Shmil it says when it falls down from your hand. The Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch Simon Mem Dalet Sif Bais brings down the Magen Avraham, and he adds on this word miyudoi like it is in the Mishpat Shmuel, not like which is in the Magen Avraham. And he writes, the minig oilim is to fast when tefillin falls from your hands. So we see that according to the Alter Rebbe also that you fast only when tefillin falls down from your hand. And he added on the word which the Magen Avraham took off. He added it on, so we see the Alter Rebbe holds like the Mishpat Shmuel that only when it falls down from your hand. The Chido in Sefer Machzik Brucha, Simon Mem Os Gimel, writes that he in his Tshuva Sefer Chaim Shol Chaylik Aleph Sim Yid Beis writes that if a person sees tefillin falling down on the floor, he does not have to fast. And he says this is also what we see in Shal Shivas Mishpat Shmil, in Shal Shivas Mari Berina, in El Yarabah, that they only write if it fell down from him, from his hands, he has to fast. But seeing tefillin falling down on the floor, you don't have to fast. And he adds on, if a person wants to fast when he sees tefillin falling down, that's on his own and that's not the minig. So to answer your question, do you need to fast if tefillin fell down on the floor, not from your hands, it fell down from a table? According to the Magen Avraham, you have to fast. According to the Mishpat Shmuel, which is the source, the makar from the Magen Avraham, you don't have to fast. And according to the Alter Rebbe and the Chido and the Mari Berina, which is also like the Mishpat Shmuel, that only when it falls down from your hand, then you fast, and if it fell down from a table, you don't need to fast. Okay, thank you for joining us, and please join us next week again, and send in your questions to inbox@Anash.org. Good night, and have a wonderful week.